Hello and thank you for joining us here at the First Alert Desk. This is another installment of Behind the Investigation, where we talk to our investigative reporter, Rachel Polanski, about her latest investigation. And this is something that we actually see more often than not. Tell me about this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a story that has a lot of families fuming. We are talking about improper recruiting at the high school level. So this is when a coach recruits an athlete who sometimes doesn't even live in the district to play on their team. And this is an investigation we've been working on for a couple months. It took us out to Douglas County, where we talked with multiple parents who tell us that the coach, Olton Downs, at Alexander High School is improperly recruiting athletes that don't live in the district. So for this story, I talked with mothers who have athletes on the team. One of those mothers even admitted that she's allowing the coach to use her address for one of these improper recruits who lives in Atlanta and is driving an hour each day to go back and forth from school. We also took these allegations to GHSA, that's the Georgia High School Association that oversees extracurricular activities for private and public schools in Georgia, and we sat down with the executive director.
And I want to show that entire investigation to you all, and we'll take a moment afterwards to talk more about what you found exactly.
Absolutely.
But if you have any questions as you're watching this, ask us below and we'll work to answer them.
I've complained, several other mothers have complained. Again, nothing has been done.
So that's what some Douglasville parents say is happening at Alexander High School.
They claim the coach is improperly recruiting kids who live outside the district. Tonight, they're speaking only to Atlanta News First investigator Rachel Polanski.
I enjoy going to the football games.
Kimberly Churchill's son has been playing football since he was old enough to walk.
He started off on the Pee Wee football team, playing rec, and then, when he got to high school, he started playing on the JV level and varsity level.
And as he entered junior year at Alexander High School, he had dreams of being a starter. But as the season unfolded, his mom says he was benched, replaced by kids he never saw in school before.
One kid is driving an hour to school and an hour from school each day.
After Churchill's son quit the team, she sent this complaint to the Georgia High School Association, or GHSA, which oversees extracurricular activities for nearly 500 public and private schools in Georgia, alleging that Coach Olton Downs was, quote, recruiting out-of-district players for his football team. And Churchill is not the only Douglasville parent making these claims.
I don't want the kids to be in trouble.
This mom, who did not want to be identified, fearing backlash because her son still plays for Alexander, admitted that she gave Coach Downs the okay to use her address for one of the recruits.
He said, well, I have a student that lives in Atlanta, and he wants to come out here to have a better life for himself and to play football. And I was wondering, if you would be okay allowing this kid to use your address. So I said, that's fine.
And you didn't know at the time that you weren't allowed to do that?
I did not.
Atlanta News First Investigates wanted to give Coach Downs the opportunity to talk about these parents' accusations, but he did not respond to our emails, so we stopped by an Alexander High School football game.
When did you start recruiting players that don't live in the district? Coach, when did you start recruiting players that don't live in the district? So are you denying it then? Coach, are all these players...
Come on, let's go, guys. Let's go, guys. Let's go.
While Coach Downs did not want to talk with us, a parent says his assistant coach spoke freely when he called her and asked if she'd provide her address for an incoming recruit. She recorded that call and shared it with us.
He needs to have the address. He can live with me. I have no problem with that. But if he has an address, he'll be able to go to that school. He'll be able to go to Alexandria.
And when the parent seemed to hesitate, the assistant coach said this.
I'm the type of person you scratch my back, I scratch your back.
Which she took to mean giving her son more playing time. Meanwhile, the GHSA defines recruiting or undue influence as, quote, the use of influence by any person connected directly or indirectly with a GHSA school to induce a student of any age to transfer from one school to another for athletic or literary competition purposes. GHSA also has the ability to impose penalties that could include fines, probations, suspensions, or forfeiture of games. It's something they did in 2020, when a longtime football powerhouse in southern Georgia, Valdosta High School, was hit with $7,500 in fines for improper recruiting, and 5 of their players were deemed ineligible. Atlanta News first uncovered that GHSA investigated 93 claims of recruiting or undue influence over the last 3 years, and only 23 of them resulted in disciplinary action. And while accusations are common,
that's what's showing from last year.
GHSA Executive Director Robin Hines says his staff rarely gets enough evidence to punish programs.
You can't really move forward if it's not going to pass legal muster. So if you have to, and it's a shame you have to look at it through those lenses, but if you can't support it in court, then you probably don't need to be moving forward.
Atlanta News First also learned that 13 employees make up the GHSA office, and only 1 of them is responsible for investigating misconduct.
Do you think that one compliance officer is enough to handle all of the complaints and allegations that come in from all of the schools across the state?
Yes.
You think it is?
Oh yeah. 99 out of 100 is usually by just disgruntled members of the communities that send those things in. Some of them may turn out to be true, but that's far and few between.
The executive director went on to say that when allegations are deemed credible, GHSA will send a letter of inquiry to the district and ask the school to conduct its own internal investigation. When we asked if a letter of inquiry had been sent to Alexander High School, GHSA said it does not comment on ongoing investigations.
I've complained, several other mothers have complained. Again, nothing has been done.
And so with just 1 month left in the season,
right is right, wrong is wrong.
Churchill believes that tactics like recruiting have taken the game out of the athletes' hands.
It's just a mess and it needs to stop.
In a statement to Atlanta News First, the Douglas County School District called the allegations about Coach Downs disturbing. They also said they did an internal investigation which found that some of the conversations with prospective athletic parents had been inappropriate, adding that there would be corrective action. But then they said that any disciplinary actions would remain confidential. Well, we believe that the community deserves to see those findings, and we will keep fighting for access to those records. Rachel Polanski, Atlanta News First.
Lot to talk about there. I mean, let's start from the very beginning. When you first heard about this and then really what started this whole investigation.
Right. So actually what's interesting about this is I got my first tip about improper recruiting over a year ago, and it wasn't even about this school. It was a different school and a different coach, but my antennas went up and I started digging into it, and that's when I first started reaching out to GHSA as well, because it took them a while to give me all of those complaints. They actually told me that they didn't have anything tracked. There wasn't an Excel spreadsheet or something that they could share with me. So you might have seen it in that story there. That was a handwritten packet that they provided to me that found that when they told me that there were 93 claims of improper recruiting or undue influence over the last 3 years, and only 23 of them resulted in any kind of action. So after that, I tried to talk with the person who had tipped me off to the other school, and they backed out last minute because they were afraid of retaliation, their kid not, getting playing time, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I found with this story that a lot of these parents are nervous about, because their kids play for these teams, they live in these districts, and these are big accusations. So the story kind of fizzled for a little bit, and then we got another tip from the mom that you heard in the story, Kimberly, and she was just really upset about this. Her son had already quit the team, so she felt like she had nothing to lose in that regard. He's not going to get less playing time if he's not on the team. And then as I started kind of chipping away, I found other parents that were willing to talk about it. You notice the other mom in the story was silhouetted and disguised. We did that because her son still plays for the team. And she could even get in trouble if something did happen here, because she is allowing the coach to use her address for one of these improper recruits, which you heard it right there. She said she didn't know that that was not allowed when she agreed to it. So depending on what happened, she also could face some kind of
disciplinary action.
Exactly. So it was tough to get people to talk out on this. I also really wanted to hear from the coach. So again, you saw that interaction where I approached him on the field and asked him some questions, and he just ignored me and ran off the field. I do want to mention that was after I had emailed multiple times trying to get his side of the story. And I genuinely still want to hear his side of the story, but he won't talk with us.
And let's talk about that for a minute. You know, often we think of football, that's a big sense of community, a lot of people that treat that as a second family. And you, in your package, you mentioned, you know, some of the students starting to realize the players are not from their school. They don't see them in class.
Right.
They don't see them in their friend groups. Let's talk a little bit about why this is such a widespread issue, because you and I talked, and I even mentioned this is something I heard about in my state before I moved to Atlanta. Why do you think that this is just an issue that continues to happen?
I think because everybody wants to win and everyone wants to be the best, and you know, for a lot of these kids, there's scholarship opportunities, and I totally understand that. But another thing, you heard from GHSA that it's hard to prove a lot of these allegations.
Right.
So I think you need a lot of evidence to even come forward with something like this. Again, it took us over a year to get people to agree to talk with us, to get all of those complaints. The recording, for example, that recording was, you know, very telling, I thought. So you need a lot of evidence before you can just say something like this, because on the other side of the coin, if you accuse someone of improper recruiting, those are big allegations. And if they're not doing it, you know, so it really goes both ways. But you're right, every state I've lived in multiple states, New York, Ohio, you hear about these, or at least you hear rumblings. It doesn't always make it to the news. But even in our comments on Facebook, lots of parents commenting, some saying, you know, this isn't new, this happens everywhere, which is kind of the point. Like, we know that, we're trying to dig into it and find out why, and then find out why there aren't penalties for a lot of this. It seems like it really has to blow up.
For anything to be
anything
done.
to happen.
Exactly. And you mentioned something, almost talking about a lack of accountability because this is so hard to prove.
Right.
Why do you think that there's not an active effort to at least try to prove it or bring it to light the way you did?
Right. I think it might be that people don't want to take that much time to gather that much evidence before they have enough to really go forward. You know, it is very time consuming. And then I think also, if you look at the Georgia High School Association, or GHSA, you heard it right from the executive director, they only have 13 employees,
right,
and only one of them is responsible for investigating misconduct for the whole state of Georgia. I was shocked, quite frankly, when I asked him, do you think that's enough? And he said yes.
Because as we can see, it might not necessarily be enough in this situation.
Some might say that.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk, of course, you do these investigations, and this is one that you're very much going to follow. What are the next steps for you here?
So I've been trying to work with Douglas County School District to get more of these complaints, because I imagine there's more complaints that were filed against this coach. My first public records request that I made, I asked them for any emails, complaints involving him going back to February 2021, and they told me that would cost me over $3,000. So we have since gotten our lawyers involved here, and we're still fighting for those records because we believe that the community deserves to see that. And then, as you heard at the end of my story there, the school did issue us a statement, and they said in it that that an internal investigation was conducted. And they said there would be, that they would not disclose the disciplinary action that comes of that. We're also working to get the results of that internal investigation, because again, we think the community has a right to know that, and they shouldn't be able to keep that confidential. There's no reason for that.
We often talk about these investigative stories that you and the investigative team all work so hard on, and it's either to educate or to hold someone accountable or inform the community. In this sense, this is all of the above. What do you hope people take away when they hear about this story?
Yeah, I mean, if you live in that area, I would say email your school district and say that you want more transparency. For people in other districts, I mean, feel free to reach out to us. I think this probably is happening in a lot of other places, and I'm happy to, you know, shine the spotlight on that and dig into perhaps another school. Yeah, we want to hear from people, so you can comment, you can email us, atlantanewsfirst.com, and, you know, we want to hear from people, and we want to keep going with this story, but to do that we need, you know, people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rachel, thank you so much. And of course, if anybody possibly has another investigation that they'd want the Atlanta News First team to look into, where should they connect with the investigative department?
Right, so they can email me at rachel.polanski@wanf.com. I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. So yeah, reach out to us. We want to hear from you. even if you think, something's happening totally unrelated to this, just a story that you think needs to be looked into, send it to us.
And of course, this full interview, along with more on Rachel's investigation, is going to be on our website, atlantanewsfirst.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.